Hello, possums. Dr. Lena here. So we can't go past, I think, the most significant visual event of the last few days. So around the world, we were treated to images of a mentally unwell man roaming the rooftop of the White House, only to find out it was the President of the United States. Having this messianic vision quest from the roof. You have to feel sorry for the security detail, don't you? On the walkie-talkies, he wants to go on the roof. We can't stop him. We've got to go up. Okay. Why was he up there? Because he wanted to oversee the renovations of turning the Rose Garden into a car park. You know. It was seriously creepy. Seriously creepy. But not to worry, because this same man is going to bring down the price of pharmaceuticals by 600%, 800%, 1200%. This is demonic. Do MAGA actually believe this stuff? Do they actually believe this stuff? The way he's talking, it's like Big Pharma's going to be paying you to take your medicine because he's so amazing. And I know I'm not alone in this. But I think everyone's really sick of it in the sense that you, as the majority of the viewers here, are Americans. I understand that. But we, the world, cannot see why big business, really big business, is letting him get away with these delirious tantrums. He's barely a Homo sapien, and he just makes these Sesame Street economic announcements on the fly. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Now, I realize we've all reached saturation point with this, but God help us all. But that's big business when we talk of big pharma. I want to kick off today with small business who are laying off people in droves for obvious reasons, tariffs kicking in. Tariffs kicking in, and big business employs 45 to 46% of the workforce. So it also how they describe small business. It's the same in Australia. It's actually, to me, they're medium-sized businesses and not really small. For me, a small business is a local garage or the local hairdressers or the local bakery or something. Anyway, the criteria for small business in the USA is under 500 employees. And everyone's at risk from this madness. Let's have a look at Small Business USA, many of whom probably voted for this man. Small Business USA, let's have a look. All right, so I think what's happening here is small business owners, particularly Trump voters, haven't got there yet. This is astonishing to me, but I don't think they've got there yet. Okay, of course, this is paying someone for their worth. This is the movement of money on a small scale, here. They're worried. They're hearing from the government. So when I designed these cards, it's about the church and state and law and order. So they're hearing all this stuff from the government that things are going to be all right. I find this really weird. This is the Nine of Cups. And I think it's like, can the universe be sarcastic? I wonder. Now, there's a metaphysical question for everyone out there, because this is the card of hopes and wishes fulfilled. So it's like they still don't believe it. But with this Queen of Swords who's going to come slashing through, I think we're going to see maybe like a class action or something of a group of small businesses in towns. I don't understand this card, and I'm going to pull some clarifiers for it. They don't believe it yet. They actually think it's going to be all right. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oh, how can that be? Security cameras, duties keep quiet. They feel like they're being watched. Security cameras, they feel like they're being watched. And they feel like duties keep quiet. It's funny because tariffs are duties on goods. You know, they're a tax on goods, they're a duty. And to keep quiet, they feel, because I think this is MAGA voting small business. Now, let me just clarify before I finish this, which is I think there were people who voted for Trump who aren't MAGA, but they voted for him because of the economy. He's better with the economy. Don't just a basic Google will tell you about his six bankruptcies and bankrupting casinos, but they don't do their research. And so they trusted him and they haven't come off the other side. They have not come off the other side. Well, you can't save people from themselves, can you, really? Like, Jesus. Okay. I'm happy. You know, the longer they don't know, their lives can be kept in this bubble. But it won't be long. How strange. Shouldn't be mystified. All right, so on to big things. Charlie Angus, Canada now, is calling for a global boycott of the USA. Not out of anger, not out of frustration, even. It's self-preservation. Canada's been attacked yet again and given extra random tariffs for all sorts of things. They're also being told what their foreign policy should be, and it should not be supporting a two-state solution. We've had the same flack here. Um, and so this dictating of everyone else's foreign policy. And no country likes that. National identities, by definition, what makes us separate from someone else? So you have even Australia, New Zealand, to the rest of the world, we probably look identical. Let me tell you, we're not. And that's what national identity is about, whether you're from a big country with a huge history or you're from a relatively new country, you've experienced independence in your lifetime, whatever. People have a national identity and he just tramples it. And no one likes that. So now he's upset all the BRICS countries because he's pulled this same stunt with Brazil. There is more and more movement, not just Charlie Angus, for a global boycott of the USA. I'm not going to read on it right now. I think let's see how things are moving forward, but I would not be surprised, is what I'll say about that. Um, Also, before I move on from that, the EU, I'm going to read on the EU because he has these demented conversations that are just bullying. And so leaders, it's very hard to know how to react. And leaders, I think we're seeing leaders of different countries, their actual personalities coming out, because it's not like normal where people operate at a high level. So if you have access to a prime minister or a president or a chancellor, everything's conducted at a very high level. It's very civilized at the top, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes. It's not like that. It's just this random nonsense. Right? So the EU have made a tentative agreement to spend $600 billion in investment in the USA. Now, the Yeti's gloating about this, but I read international news, and that's not what is being said in Europe, let me tell you. Because they've had to suddenly spend more money on defense because of Ukraine and being deserted by the 80-year ally. So a lot of extra money's gone there. They've wanted to divest from gas coming from Russia in support of Ukraine, so that's an expensive exercise. What's happening with the EU and this 600 billion? Let's have a look. Oh, three of these and three of the oracles. Okay. EU. Hmm. Well, yes. Mm. Oh, this could also be the BRICS, of course. Now, yeah. All right. Now, while they're nodding, because we know with Trump, he doesn't have any interpersonal skills, right? He's never had to get by in the workplace. He's never had to be accountable to a board. He took his father's money, lost it, then borrowed heaps from the Middle East and Russia to do it. He's only employed his own children, like he's not equipped to deal with these issues. So the EU are moving away. They're trying to move away with dignity, if you like, for want of a better word, but they're primarily moving away to preserve their values represented by these pentacles. And that would be things like, oh, I don't know, democracy? I don't know. Okay, so they're compelled to move away because he poisons, oops, YouTube, naked figures with this devil card. He poisons everything his little cloven hooves touch. Right. They now know that. Trump 1.0 was different. Everyone was just saying, let's just get through the next 4 years. And then Biden came and there was sanity and so forth. But people are now not prepared to risk that. Cyber attack. I think this is to do with Russia actually, because the EU pulling further away and further in support of Ukraine, I think they will experience cyber attacks. Disappointing outcomes. It's easy to say when you say it quickly, well, we'll just trade with other people, and Canada's done a magnificent job and most countries do it, but it's not easy. And so disappointing outcome can be, well, we've managed to replace this thing that we got from the United States, but it's hard to replace this thing, or we've got other people to buy our products, but we're going to miss the American market. Obviously, it's a huge market. So they're a bit disappointed in the outcomes. Earthquake shake-up for the EU. Now, what do I think that means? I think this is rattling the cage because the EU, we've got to remember, was starting to splinter off. The far right was starting to get electoral success in different countries. You're juggling 27 countries and their national personalities, if you like. Then this brought everyone together, with the Yeti being so obviously a rogue actor. But now they're dealing with the nitty-gritty of that, and it's causing a monumental shake-up. But I'm getting the Russian vibe. I'll have to do a Russian read in a minute. But lest we remember, this is symbolically talking about earthquakes in terms of real, defense realignments and stuff. But literal earthquakes now, particularly that big one, was it 8.8? Now, this is the fundamental problem with nuclear power. There are many problems, but let me just take a minute here. I know it's a digression, but I think it's important. So, those of us who aren't 23 anymore, closer to my age, we remember Chernobyl. We remember Three Mile Island. And we certainly remember Fukushima. But also in the Pacific, the French did their nuclear testing in the Pacific, in my local ocean. Now, people think of oceans as empty spaces. No, they're not. I am related to an entire huge Pacific Island family, hundreds of people. These islands are often under a meter above sea level. So the Pacific is a real place and a home to real people. Aloha, Hawaii. They're real places. They're not just tourist destinations, real places with real history, their own culture, their own people, their own languages. And so the nuclear testing was a disaster in the Pacific. But the thing with France is 80%, I think, roughly, you can look it up, nuclear dependent, clean energy, cheap energy. No, it's not, because they're still using their 1950s reactors because it costs untold billions to decommission a nuclear reactor. It also takes years for them to cool down. So earthquakes mean nuclear power facilities are very vulnerable. That was my point there. Okie dokie. Now, so climate change in the Alps and the Pyrenees means more water is seeping and destabilizing the ground under France, but we'll wait and see. Now, hold on a moment. I need my next news. Oh, yes. So, don't you love those women from I've Had It? And they refer to the Yeti as taco tits. I couldn't have put it better myself. So Taco Tits has tacoed again with the Wall Street Journal about the birthday card, which I've always thought was a furphy. I don't actually care if he doodled it or he didn't doodle it. I'm sorry, there are bigger issues about women being trafficked. I know where it all fits in and all of that, but I never thought it was important. I could be wrong about that going forward. Okay, now let's get back to Russia because apparently, I read this morning in Raw Story, the Yeti's phone calls with Putin go for hours. And it's not a conversation. No, no, no. You might think it's a conversation. You'd be so wrong. It's a Yeti monologue, right? So he goes on a riff for hours. I mean, Putin just probably puts someone else in the chair with the phone on speaker, and goes and works out in the gym or something. I don't know. But he can't possibly think it's going well with this relationship. Now, He's an equal opportunity abuser in the sense allies, enemy, doesn't make any difference. So who does he send to deal with this extremely volatile time in history with the balance of so many countries at stake? He sends Steve Witkoff. What does he do? He's another real estate mogul who's played a bit with crypto, doesn't speak Russian, and knows zippity doo-dah about foreign policy. And he's sending him on his own. It's kind of weird. So let's have a look at how things are looking through Putin's eyes. What does he think is happening? Because another digression here, because the Yeti is a bully and he's a primitive bully, he's a chess beater. And speaking of beta, he's a beta male posing as an alpha male, and he's had zero impact. Netanyahu is intending to expand the war in Gaza. It's horrendous. And Putin has not done the dance and come to the table. So let's see what things look like. Let's have a look. Sorry. Putin. All right. Now, I'm going to pull some of these as well, but I'll tell you what's happening here so far. Okay. The Yeti fancies himself as an emperor, but here we have Putin in a state of nostalgia because it's always been, and this isn't just me talking off the top of my head, serious Putin watchers have always said he's wanted to pull back the Soviet Union to its greatness, the nostalgia of the Soviet Union, which broke up in the 80s. So that's always been his goal. Crossroads. So he's under enormous pressure. Also within Russia, I think, the Russian casualties are immense. The economy is suffering. He has to make a decision. But here's his problem. This is my card for the Twitterverse, social media. Now, even though repressive regimes can control the internet to some extent, particularly for people who are over 40 or over 50 or so, if the state doesn't want you to watch this, you wouldn't be watching it, but it doesn't stop young people. So there's much more access because of the world we live in now, the modern world, that more and more younger Russians who are acutely invested in this, they either don't want to be sent to the front line for obvious reasons, but there's been a brain drain. The economy is on its knees. They are alert to this. And he is worried about a coup. He is so worried about a coup with this King of Cups. So let's just have a quick look with the oracles. Have you heard there's a hunger strike in Alligator Alcatraz? Hunger strikes are an act of desperation. As you think about them historically, the suffragette women who were jailed, not all of them, but a significant number went on hunger strike. And in that context were force fed, which is often the case when someone's in prison. You had the IRA hunger strikes, and I was living in the UK when that was happening with Bobby Sands, and it was horrendous. The force feeding is horrendous. The problem with Alligator Alcatraz is It's essentially a privatized mini industry. So there could be force feeding, which is a form of torture. It's not like drip feeding in a hospital when you can't eat. It's force feeding. It could be that, or they let people die. I mean, they're a private thing. Speaking of private, do you see, ICE is soliciting for more ICE agents. And apparently, let me know if you've heard this or not, you get 50,000 for signing up. That's a lot of money for guys who aren't working or working in other industries. 50,000, that's apart from your wage for signing up. And if you have a student debt, it will be waived. Evil. Oh, and I've got to do Pam Bondi in a minute. So back to Putin and Russia here. Putin and Russia. Tell me about Putin and Russia. This is a follow-up to these other cards. Controlled puppet, coerce and manipulate fell out. And controlled narrative. I mean, that's the story of modern Russia. That is the story. I do love these oracle cards. Putin himself isn't a puppet, but he has puppets. In fact, I'd go as far as to say if you work for Putin, you're a controlled puppet. He's a master of coercion and manipulation. So, by definition, he'd have dirt on all his high-level henchmen. They all have it on each other. Don't you love the word compromise? You know, so here you have it, controlling. And then controlling the narrative. One channel, state TV, look at that. Controlling the narrative. We're just in Ukraine to rid the Ukrainians of the Nazi regime. And we're doing it for you, Russia, to keep you safe. Like, really? Oh my God. Now, in other news, Pam Bondi. She's just issued, this is just today, I think, or last night or something, out of nowhere, a $50 million reward for any information leading to the arrest of Maduro, the corrupt president of Venezuela. Not a particularly nice man. Not the point. This is about putting out a reward to lead to the arrest of the head of another country. Now, any Latinos out there, please give me feedback in the comments. Now, people have been saying for years, rigged elections, etc., etc. It's not that the people of Venezuela are warm and fuzzy about Maduro, but this is a precedent. So let's have a look at Pam Bondi. Is she looking for a distraction from the Epstein nightmare? What's going on here? What's going on here? Talk about gangster fascism, all what's happening with Pam Bondi. All right. Hmm. There she is. Oh, not surprising. Okay. Page of Wands, the message. I think they've already made overtures behind the scenes to get him to leave. He has said, no, that'd be a no. But it's a no for now. It's a no for now. What is the goal? Here she is as the Queen of Wands, who's quite entrepreneurial. This is about the oil. The US wants to either have a compliant head of state in Venezuela so they have access to the oil, or it could lead to an actual takeover. I think the international justice scenario would actually have to kick in if the US occupies Venezuela. But she, Pam Bondi, doesn't want it to come to that. She wants to threaten him with this arrest. And then what? You arrest him in the US. Are you going to send him to, alligator country too? Down the bayou, ahead of another country, however warped, distorted, unfair that regime might be, he is the head of quite a significant country that has oil on the doorstep. I mean, it's outrageous. This, I feel strongly, is international law. And I think even this proposition of the, bounty is disturbing to international law. Oh, dear God. So they're against the clock, trying to do as many hideous things as they can in record time. So let's now have a look for you guys. Now, I'm already on the 8th of the 8th, the Lion's Gate. For you guys. Let's have a look. And I'm going to pull a couple of these cards and see. Oh, forgot to say. Somewhere in the blur of nonsense this week, the Yeti was asked, would he pardon Sean Combs? Did he? And he rambled on because he can't put out a salient sentence. And he said, well, he's half innocent. Half innocent? What does that even mean? Sorry, let me clear that energy away. You go. Oops. What to come out here? Oh, good. Oh, I like that. Oh, if you looked at these cards, you wouldn't know anything awful was going on. They're so gorgeous. Oh. Now, okay, we have here the Nine of Pentacles, which is encouraging you to think, I actually have the resources I need. In other words, even if you're feeling financially vulnerable and have all sorts of individual tensions, in your life, know that there is more to be plucked from the tree. We tend to operate what we call in sociology the deficit discourse. We often tend to look at what we don't have rather than what we have. And that's how people get into massive debt, of course, wanting these things they think they need. This is bringing things a bit closer to home. Look at this, the beautiful Empress with the wheat and the forest and the river. Look at these two cards together. And I think that's what the universe is trying to say. You can magnify with the Empress. The Lion's Gate itself, the 8th of the 8th, is about manifesting what you need. And my recommendation is to try and revisit in your head what abundance is. And often it's not a pile of gold, so to speak. You know what I mean? Valuing what you have and sharing that with others, including, sharing with others with respect. So this is about how can you work with one other person, two other people, 20 other people? How can you work together to make things better for each other. So, in other words, I'm saying try and think of things outside of I need this thing and I have to pay money for it. Bring back barter. This is going to now be my card of barter. So, if you're able-bodied, can you mow somebody's lawn for them and they make you 3 dinners to take home or something? Have you got skills you can swap and share? Can you shop in a more cooperative way? You only need, say, 8 people in a cooperative, and 2 of you go and buy the big heavy things, the flour, the rice, and the sugar once a month. You only have to shop once a month for those big items. Please be creative. We've talked about this before, but I'd like you to share online. How are some ways of exchanging skills and bypassing hard currency? I think it's a lesson for all of us. So, guys, lots of love, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Oh, P.S. Please go and check out the live stream I just had with Laurie, The Way of Positive Change. We had a great rave. Ciao for now.